people, and welcome back to my channel. Sorry about that noise in the background. I'm so happy for those of you who have joined us once more for this live stream. Today we're just going to be talking about everything medicine. I noticed in the other Q&As people were just sending in general medicine questions, so I thought that me and the guest who I'm going to introduce in a second could just tackle any questions that you have and beyond. So yeah, I'm just going to quickly introduce my amazing guest. Yeah, do you just want to introduce yourself? Just tell us how you've been, who you are, what you do. That would be amazing.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Tash. I've just finished my third year of medicine at King's College London. I am an aspiring GP. I am quite present on Instagram. I've got an Instagram page where I talk about how to get into medicine, and I talk about mental health things, like everything mental health. Yeah, that's me really.
Love
Nothing
that.
more to report.
It's so like everyone's so humble whenever I ask them to introduce themselves, but honestly, Tash is an amazing person. She does such amazing things for prospective medical students and current medical students like myself. So definitely check out her social media pages where she gives advice to prospective students and openly speaks about her experiences with mental health and just, you know, being a student. So everything's in the description bar below, or will be on screen for you guys. So yeah, okay, let's get started with the questions. Make sure that you're sending them in, and we'll try and get through as many as we can in the next kind of few minutes. First one sent in by Lorraine Trevor, and they ask, what's your favorite thing about medicine? Whoa, we're diving straight into the deep end with this one.
Jesus, so many things. For me, it's sort of how different each day is, and you get to meet a wide range of different people from all backgrounds, all ages, and you get to chat to them, and in most cases they respect you and you respect them back. It's just really nice. Like, I don't think there are many jobs where you're able to sort of meet a stranger and like they trust you to sort of share like really personal things sometimes. Yeah, I just like how every day is different. I like the like mix of placement, the mix of like proper learning. It's a nice balance, I think.
For sure. I guess mine's quite similar to Tash's, but I guess because at Oxford we have like a clinical split. I'm still in the preclinical years, so unfortunately I haven't had that much patient contact, but the little that I have had, I've really enjoyed. I guess my favorite thing about studying medicine is kind of seeing everything come together. So like in my first term, I don't know about you, Tash, but everything seemed so abstract. Like all the lectures seemed like so like they didn't link and connect and make sense. However, as you progress through the course, like everything comes together and you get those light bulb moments, like where you're like, oh, okay, and that's why, like, you know, salt increases blood pressure, or like all these kind of things, and it just makes sense. And I really like seeing how the theory that we learn could be applied to like the human body. So that's like the scientific side. I can't wait to get into my clinical years, so then I'll start like applying medicine to actual people.
I think clinical years like tie it together even more as well, because you're like you like see what you've learned like on an actual person.
Oh yeah, for sure. Honestly. And Tash, at King's College London, when do you like switch from your preclinical years to your clinical years, and how was that experience for you?
So at King's, so our first year is very sort of science heavy. The only sort of clinical thing you do is that you have like weekly sessions with a patient actor. So like a patient simulated session where they pretend to come into your GP surgery basically, and you're the medical student talking to them and just taking a history basically. We also have a few sort of clinical practical sessions where we're just in like the sort of mock hospital ward that we have, and like practice basic clinical skills like how to take a blood pressure. I'm trying to think like what else we did, but things like that. And then from your second year you start in a hospital once a week and in a GP practice once a week. So in second year you have 2 days a week sort of on placement, and then third year you have 3 days a week on placement, and then fourth and fifth year it's just all the time, well, like 4 days a week.
Yeah, so it kind of like
so
gets
that's
like, oh sorry, I interrupted, carry on.
No, I was just going to say, so it just kind of progresses to get more and more, but I wouldn't really say King's is split into like preclinical and clinical. It's very integrated
Integrated.
from like almost day one, which is nice.
Cool. Hopefully that's answered your question, Lorraine. We went on a bit of a tangent, but hopefully all this information that we say is super, super helpful for you guys. Next question sent in by Lalu, and they ask, oh, okay, I've skipped a question. Let's backtrack. The one before, sorry, was a question about the pros and cons of studying at Oxbridge and King's College London. So I guess we can answer those questions for our respective universities. Should I go first, or you cool?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay, so for Oxford, I mean, I can only speak on behalf of Oxford. I guess the pros is that, you know, like Oxford is kind of one of the best med schools in the world, so you do get that specialist. You kind of get that specialized information, and we're taught by the world leading academics in their fields. And another really good thing about Oxbridge is that we have a collegiate system, which means that the university at Oxford is split into 39 individual colleges. I'm at Brasenose College, and essentially each of them act like a little campus, a little mini university, and that becomes your little family. And it makes it that much easier, because med school can be very overwhelming. And, you know, I don't know how many people are in your class at King's College London, but at Oxford we have about 150 people in the med school in my year group, and that can seem quite a lot, whereas at Brasenose there's only 7 medics, so all of us have got relatively close because we're always walking together to lectures, we have deadlines together, we do essays together, so it kind of makes it more home-like, and you kind of know your people. But that hasn't stopped me from making friends outside of the collegiate system. Tash, I don't know if you want to say the pros of King's, and then we can kind of progress onto the cons.
So I think the pros, that one, it's in London, and out of all the medical schools in London, it's the most central. So you're literally based at London Bridge, and there's like libraries on the Strand. So for me, I was so excited about like being in like the heart of London and being like surrounded by the real world. I was sort of I didn't want to go to like I'm kind of throwing shade at Oxford.
Oh, don't do that! Yeah, I'm joking. Be as honest as you are.
Go to, like a campus uni. I mean, I suppose Oxford's like in the city, but I wanted like a really big city. So that's, I think, a pro. Also, a lot of conferences and talks happen in London, so you've kind of got that on your footsteps. Oh, that's not saying.
Yeah,
you've got that like really close by. You've got one of the like world leading hospitals, and like I think because of how diverse London is, you're seeing like different diseases that you might not have seen elsewhere. Like people are literally traveling all over the world and coming back to London. You might see, like, I saw something like a random tropical disease that apparently this consultant had never seen, but the person happened to flew back to London, so that's where they went. So yeah, things like that are pretty cool. King specific, I really like how the early clinical contact, yeah, and you can intercalate, but you don't have to. Well, at least when I applied, it was like that, so that was a pro as well.
That's absolutely amazing. And I actually applied to King's College London. As you said, I love the fact that it was so central. And it's a really nice campus. And yeah, I mean, if I didn't get into Oxford, I would more than happily have put King's as my firm choice. It's an amazing university. I guess we can progress onto the cons then. Okay, so my first year at Oxford, I guess the biggest con was definitely the intensity. So at Oxford and at Cambridge, the terms are very compact and short. So we have 8-week terms in comparison to other universities which have much longer terms, meaning that we have to get through kind of the same amount of content, even more in some years, in less time. So I found that like a week timetable was so compact and I had so much to do, and that I risked kind of burning out or finding it super overwhelming. So it was so important that I found my rhythm, I found my balance straight away. And yeah, it definitely was overwhelming. And also the fact that we have tutorials which are almost like these mini seminars. They're very much more intimate with your tutor, in the sense that there's 2-3 people with one single tutor, and you kind of get that specialized learning, which is specialized for you, your capabilities, your strengths and your weaknesses, which are absolutely amazing. But I found that overwhelming in the sense that each tutorial I had to prepare, an essay, prep work for that, alongside, you know, doing work set by the central medicine department of the university, alongside doing work for practicals, and etc, etc, etc. But it did mean that because our terms were so short, we had a massive holiday. So our holidays were about 6 to 7 weeks. So honestly, like the amount of time I spent at Oxford was like equal to the amount of time I spent at home, which was kind of weird to think about. But yeah, I guess that's my biggest con for Oxford.
I think my biggest con about King's is how big our year is. So our year, we've got like 400 people, and it's kind of difficult to like, I don't know, you're kind of, it's just so many people, and it can be kind of overwhelming and kind of hard to like find your people as such. There are disadvantages with being in London as well. Like, it's so big, and again can be sort of like intimidating at times, and it's busy, and it's quite a stressful place. So King's has like quite a low student satisfaction score, and I think that's because of like organization. Like, they're really not that organized, but to be honest, it doesn't really bother me. Like, it's annoying, but I wouldn't say it was a reason not to go to King's. But yeah, that would be my con.
Amazing. Well, not so amazing, but amazing that we've answered the question. Hopefully that helps. We're going to move on to the next one, which was sent in, and Lalu asks, is Oxford a friendly place? Is it easy to make friends? So I guess, Tash, you can kind of answer the question for King's College London, even though it's like specified for Oxford. But from kind of an Oxford student perspective, Oxford, for me at least, I found it so friendly. I did not struggle to make friends in the slightest. I think the collegiate system, which I was talking about before, really helps, because it kind of takes this really overwhelming experience of being in university with over, 10,000 other students, and it kind of diminishes that down into a bite-sized piece of that, so it's a lot more manageable in that sense. But again, it doesn't stop you from making friends outside of college. But I found that in Freshers Week, because I was in a college, because I was also in student accommodation, it was easy for me to make friends with people in my accommodation, in my college, doing my course. And I must say, this goes for all universities, the amazing thing about societies is that it's not only an opportunity for you to explore a new hobby or like a new thing, but it's also a place for you to make friends. So in Freshers Week, a lot of the societies actually host Freshers Week events. One of my favorite societies during my time at Oxford is the ACS, the African Caribbean Society, and I just remember them hosting the best events in Freshers Week. So they had an eat and greet, and I'm a foodaholic, I love all things food, and they were giving out free pizza, and it was an opportunity to meet other freshers like me. So I was like, yep, I'm there. And that was just an opportunity to kind of find my people. I must say, there's thousands and thousands of people in your year group at university, so don't ever think that you're never going to find your people, because you definitely will. And there's loads of events, sports societies and other opportunities for you to meet people who have similar interests to you. Tash, if you kind of want to add to that, or...
Yeah, kind of similar. I think, because there are so many people, okay, it might take a while to find like your closest friends, but there is, you will find someone that you like and enjoy spending time with. I think also because I think everyone doing medicine is kind of similar in a way, like you already have like some similarities, so I find that it's generally quite easy to get on with people studying medicine. And I think, I reiterate what Fran just said about societies and sports and everything, especially you're able also to meet people from different year groups, which can be really nice, and they can like offer you advice. They've been through the year that you're doing, for example. So I think it's pretty easy.
Cool. And I guess another thing to stress, just as Tash said, is that although it may take a while for you to find your closest friends, like you definitely will, especially if you're doing, medicine, which is a long degree. And the friends that I had in Freshers Week, are by no means the same friends that I ended up in having at the end of first year. And I imagine when I go back to university, the friends that I had now, or the circle of friends I have now, will not be the same circle of friends I have at the end of second year. So it's constantly changing, and that's like absolutely okay. I hope that's kind of answered your question. Make sure to send in questions if you have any more, and we'll move on to the next one, which was also sent in by Lalu, who asks, are there any scholarships for international students or for medicine? So obviously this will differ between universities. Tash, are you aware of like opportunities for international students or for medicine?
I'm not aware of specifically for international students, but King's does offer a lot of bursaries for like all students, and actually, most people can get some help. And they're quite generous, very generous actually. So I think, if you need extra sort of financial support, then the university are very willing to support you. Like, especially for medicine, like we need doctors, so we need people to like graduate and get through it. But sorry, I'm not aware of the specific ones for international students, but I'm sure there are some. I think if it's just a case of going on the website, and there's a separate section for funding
For sure.
and fees, I think.
For sure. At the end of this live stream, I'll try and add like all the links to kind of King's College scholarships and bursaries in the description bar below. But that's obviously the best kind of resource for you to resort to, because they'll have all the up-to-date information. And at Oxford, again, similarly to Tash, I'm not aware of kind of the scholarships available for international students, but I am aware that Oxford are also very, very generous. They offer so many bursaries and scholarships, and it's quite interesting because they're so like niche. So I remember scrolling through the scholarship page, and it was like we're offering such amount for students who come from the United Emirates States, who are first generation, like very, very niche scholarships. And it was quite sad for me in my case, because I was scrolling through all of them and I only qualified for one of them, I think, and that was something called the Franxstudies scholarship, which is really, really generous. And I was awarded that because I came from low socio-economical backgrounds, so they just give you kind of this money and also support if you come from a household, I think, of under like £25,000. So there is a lot of support available to you from the university, because as Tash said, they want us to graduate and become doctors. So I'll put all the information you need in the description bar below, and hopefully that will answer some of the questions that you have. Moving on to the next one, sent in by Visualized by Anonymous, and they ask, how are you guys? That's a really nice question. So Tash, how are you?
I'm good on the whole. I'm a bit tired, a bit hot. I'm feeling quite busy. I've been up to quite a lot this week. But I am gonna have a nice chilled day tomorrow, and just watch Netflix all day.
Oh my gosh, that is the dream. What are you currently watching on Netflix?
Fresh Meat.
Oh, okay, it's interesting.
It's the one about like university students. It's like a comedy. It's quite fun.
Cool. Okay, that's definitely been added to my list. Moving on to the next question, sent in by Visualized by Anonymous again, and they ask, what was the most shocking thing about med school?
So for me, it was probably the dissections. I actually didn't realise when I applied that King's still did full body cadaver dissections. So that was quite a shocking experience. It's not like a normal life thing that you walk into a room with like 20 cadavers. But it was cool in some way.
It was cool. No, honestly, I 100% relate. So at King's College you have like the actual dissection, so you're doing it yourself, or is it like pro sections?
Oh, it's complete dissection.
That's
you
so
do it
cool.
all.
That's so cool. In my first year, we only had pro sections. So kind of the difference between pro sections and dissections is pro sections, you kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, Tash, you kind of have that piece of anatomy that has already been cut up by kind of the specialists, and you don't really do anything hands-on. You're just kind of looking at the anatomy. Whereas dissections, you're physically actually cutting things up. Crazy. At Oxford we have pro sections, and similarly to Tash, it was quite shocking. I remember them trying to ease all the first year students in, so kind of our first week of pro sections they only showed us like bones, like human bones, and gradually they kind of built onto the most like gruesome kind of bloody kind of things, just make sure that one, we were able to handle it, and two, like no one was shocked. And in fact, in our first week of dissection room, or DR as they call it, there were a couple of people who fainted in my year, which was crazy. It's so crazy. But you do get used to it over the years. You do get used to seeing the cadavers. Yeah. I guess the nice thing about kind of doing the dissections or the prosections is that it's another way of learning. So at Oxford, the piece of anatomy that you're learning in your lectures, say for example you're learning about muscles, then in your dissection room, your DR, you'll be exposed to the muscles, so it kind of complements in that sense and supplements your learning and reinforces it, which is quite nice. Yeah, I think I just kind of stole your answer because I just said exactly what you said for my most shocking thing about med school.
Doesn't matter.
Carry on, sorry.
No, that was just my answer. Nothing else that's shocking, I don't think.
Cool. Moving on to the next question. Sent in by Visualized by Anonymous again, and this one is an interesting one. Could we debunk any myths about med school or medical students? So I guess to answer this, we could think about like one of the most common myths and kind of debunk it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many.
Honestly.
So first of all, that like medical students have no life. That's completely wrong. Medical students do have a life. That medical school is so stressful. It's not always, it doesn't have to be, it's what you make of it. Like if you don't need to pull like all-nighters, you don't need to work on the weekends. It's so feasible to do, well, especially at King's, it's so feasible to do like 9 to 5 days, like Monday to Friday, and that's how I like to do it, like treat it almost like a job. Yeah, those would be my two biggest myths.
I guess kind of just to echo on from Tash, my biggest myth before going to med school was that I'd arrive there and everyone would be super, super smart, super, super genius, and super, super competitive as well. Because naturally, you know, to get into medicine, it is quite a competitive course, and I thought that would carry on in university, especially at Oxford or King's College, which are really, really kind of competitive med schools. But, you know, that was definitely a big myth. When I got to med school, everyone was super, super nice. You know, everyone just wants to pass. You do get those you do get those few people who are out there trying to get the highest kind of marks, which is natural because you get those in any form of setting. But the majority of people are so, so happy to help everyone out, you know, to share their notes around, and are just there kind of wanting to pass or get a good pass, which is really, really nice, and a very nice atmosphere, as opposed to kind of the toxic atmosphere which is often associated with like super, super competitive schools or environments. So I guess that was my biggest myth going into med school, which I completely debunked. Yeah, so hopefully that's answered your question. Next question sent in by Didi Modi, and she asks, do you get some clinical exposure at King's College London and Oxford during your first 3 years of med school? So I guess we've kind of already answered this question, but we can like quickly go over the answer. Yeah, so Tash, if you want to start with case.
Yeah. So King's from first year, you don't get direct clinical experience, but you get those patient simulation sort of sessions that I was on about, where you have an actor playing a patient and you're playing the medical student. You also learn some clinical skills, but then from second year you're on placement 2 days a week, and in third year you're on placement 3 days a week. So basically from second year you've got proper clinical contact.
Cool. So at Oxford it's slightly different because we have like a preclinical school and a clinical school. First 3 years are preclinical school, and we don't really get that much clinical contact. In my first year we just had, in total, I think it was 3 or 4 GP sessions. So we kind of went off to a local GP surgery and we spent 4 hours there kind of working or shadowing the GP, and that was basically it. But I guess it depends on what your preferences are. You know, if you want to get hands-on straight away and get into clinical work straight away, maybe consider applying to universities that, you know, have early clinical contact. If you prefer kind of learning the theory first, learning the science first, then having, you know, 3 years of just clinical contact, maybe consider applying to universities such as Oxford, such as Imperial, I believe, who have that preclinical clinical split. But yeah, so we don't get that much, but we definitely get loads and loads later on in clinical school. One thing I must add actually is that I always thought, because, you know, we'd be doing preclinical school and we wouldn't have that much patient contact, that I would completely forget that I'm a medical student and that one day I'm going to become a doctor. But I must say that at Oxford, we do have a lot of practicals, physiology practicals in particular, where we learn key clinical skills such as, performing an ECG and, taking blood pressure and like really, really good things like that. And that kind of reminds me that one day, I'm going to be using the knowledge that I've learned in lectures and applying it. And I think it's really, really nice the way they do it, because, in the lecture you learn about how the ECG works, the physiology behind it, why the heart has electrical signals and why the ECG looks the way it does. And then the next practical session is using the ECG, which works really, really well for my style of learning. Hopefully that's answered your question. Tash, I don't know if you've got anything to add.
I think also just to add to that, I think so even first year, like at King's, where you don't have like proper clinical contact, you can still like get it through sort of societies. So for example, the Emergency Medicine Society at King's offer like shadowing with the London Ambulance Service. So you can get the chance, like I did it in my third year, but I could have done it in first year. You just literally like can observe a paramedic shift and like go in an ambulance for like their shift, which is pretty cool. So, and the same with like the pediatric societies, they have like some volunteering things you can do. So you definitely can get involved, even if it's like not directly in your course.
Cool. Yeah, thank you so much for that, Tash. Super important to keep into consideration, and I'll try and remember everything we spoke about, so I can just add all the links in the description bar below. Next question sent in by Manuel E. Dot, and they ask, how can you make sure you come across as genuine in your interviews?
I think number one, be honest. So everything that you say, make sure it is the truth, and then that you are going to be genuine. Coming across as genuine, I think, don't be afraid to sort of take a moment to think about what you're going to say. I'm not very good at that, as you can tell. But even if it's MMI, don't feel like you just have to like blurt out the answers straight away. Try and not like pre-rehearse answers. Have an idea of like why you want to study medicine. But like don't like practice it with your mum and like repeat your paragraph like 10 times. Just don't do it. Like even if it means you're kind of like, I want to do medicine for this reason, then you're like, and this reason, like you're thinking about it. I think showing that you're actually thinking about the thought rather than blah 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 is then you seem genuine.
100%.
That'd be my tip.
Tash kind of just stole my answer now. I'm coming up empty-handed. But what I can kind of think of is, as Tash said, definitely don't kind of before the interview practice all the interview questions. One, you'll come across as too polished, and it will be obvious to the admissions tutors that you've just sat there for hours trying to memorize these answers. And just to say, admissions tutors have been doing this for years and years, so it's very easy for them to spot when someone's kind of not being genuine and when they're just kind of giving out a pre-rehearsed answer. And kind of another thing to add on to that is that kind of when you don't pre-rehearse the answers and you just kind of go for it, you just bash it out in the interview itself, you find that it flows more and it's less kind of disjointed. And oftentimes when I say in other interviews, when I try to pre-rehearse interview answers, they were often for one set question, and if in the interview I was asked a variation of that question, I found it very, very hard to adapt this pre-rehearsed answer that I had. Another thing I can say is you'll never ever know the questions that you're going to be asked, especially in MMIs where they can ask absolutely everything. At Oxford we have traditional interviews, which are kind of like panel interviews, and they can ask you absolutely anything. So it's so important for you to take that into consideration. But what I can say in preparation is just practice speaking in a formal setting, in a kind of professional setting, speaking about science, speaking about why you want to do medicine. One thing I can recommend is, if your school don't already offer mock interviews, which a lot of schools don't offer, that's okay. Maybe speak to a trusted teacher and ask her if you maybe one day after school, she can stay behind and you can just do 15-30 minutes of just her practicing being the interviewer and you practicing being the interviewee. I found that really helped for me. Maybe get other medics, prospective medics in your school who are interested in going into medicine as well, to just set up these kind of mock interviews, and that definitely helps boost your confidence and get accustomed to that kind of setting, which is so important in your preparation, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with that. And I don't think it has to be like directly medicine related. Even if you're speaking to a teacher that's like a Spanish teacher or doesn't know anything about the medicine application process, even if it's like, tell me about the weather today, I think it gets you used to like that environment, like you said, Fran, and like how you speak and come across. So yeah, just talk to people that maybe not like you're a teacher that knows you really well. I mean, any teacher is better than nothing, but try and sort of maybe get like your mum's best friend or something to
Yeah.
ask you questions. Like you can do it over Zoom, yeah,
So
that would be
true.
my suggestion.
So true. I guess whilst we're kind of on this topic of interviews, we could kind of answer what was our biggest misconception or myth about interviews, like going in. I guess
that I didn't know the answers to the questions.
To be fair, same.
But actually, they were more like finding out about me, so I could answer them all. Yeah, and that I actually kind of like, it sounds weird, but it was like an enjoyable process at King's, definitely. Like it wasn't super stressful, and all the interviewers were really nice, and I thought they'd be really scary, and they weren't.
Same. I guess at my interview at King's, similarly to Tash, I thought it was going to be super scary, and that they were going to that the interviewers were trying to catch me out. But when I was actually, in the interview itself, I could see how, like, when I was getting stuck on some of my answers, the interviewers were trying to help me. They were trying to prompt me along, and it was clear to see that they weren't there to try and catch me out. They were actually there, and they wanted us to succeed. They want you to do well. They want you to get that offer, and it's kind of really, really nice and wholesome just to realize that they're not there to make you fail or to catch you out in any form, shape or form. And that applies to kind of the other interviews I had at Oxford, at Imperial, which is really nice to take into consideration. Cool. Next question, also sent in by Manal, and they ask, when do you recommend we start preparing for the BMAT? So Tash, I don't know if you...
Yeah, I did do the BMAT. I didn't prepare enough for it.
Same here.
So BMAT is in November, October?
Yeah.
I don't know when it is. I think once you get your UCAT out of the way, I mean, it depends when you're doing your UCAT, but if I was doing it again, obviously there's no right answer here, but I would just work towards the UCAT, if you are doing the UCAT, and then just start revising BMAT straight away. I think once you go back to college or school or whatever, and like A-levels start and you've got like homework and stuff to do, then life gets busier. So try and start like before you go back to school, and just do like little bits here and there. I mean, from what I remember of it, it's very like physics, chemistry, biology, GCSE heavy, and I thought I would never see a physics question again. So go over like your areas of weaknesses, I guess, like, because I did biology and chemistry at AS level and A level obviously, but I hadn't done physics since GCSEs, so go over like the things that you're not as confident in first, and then everything else.
For sure. So yeah, Tash has just kind of said all the important things. Another thing I can say in terms of like resources that are really, really good for you to use, and cheap or free, for section 1, and actually just for the whole BMAT, I recommend using the past papers that are available on the website. I think they predate back to like the 2010, so there are plenty of past paper questions for you to use there. If you do run out, maybe try and use the TSA, which is a different admissions test, the thinking skills assessment section 1, which is very similar to BMAT section 1. If you do run out there, maybe consider investing in a book. So I used the ISC green BMAT book, which had like 400 questions. I got it secondhand for about £4 or £5, and I actually went on to sell it, so definitely worth the money. For section 2, as Tash said, you will be seeing physics again. A lot of us don't do physics at A level, so definitely practice that physics. I use the CGP science guide, which is available through the BMAT website. It's like the official syllabus and guide. And for section 3, you don't actually have to write a lot of essays. Just practice planning them under time pressure. And the essays that you do write, get other people to read it. Get your teachers to read it if they're happy doing so, or get other medical students, or other people who want to apply to medicine to read it as well. And yeah, that's all like relatively cheap or free resources that you can use to prepare for the BMAT. Next question. sent in by James San. And before we get onto the question, a lot of you have asked if Tash has a YouTube channel. Yes, she has a YouTube channel, an amazing one. So it's under the handle Tash the Medic. I'll put it in the description bar below, and you should see it on screen. But definitely go and subscribe to her. She makes videos about all things mental health and medicine and gives advice just like this. So next question sent in by James, and he asks, how much chemistry and maths are involved in a medical degree?
I think it depends what uni you go to. I'm sure Fran's answer will be slightly different to mine. So our first year was pretty heavy, and obviously you're kind of learning the biochemistry, the physiology behind each sort of organ system and each sort of, the healthy body, and then also when it goes wrong and like a disease. But every doctor that I've spoken to has said that you will never remember your first, like the preclinical years of medicine. It's actually not that important as a practicing doctor. Yeah. Like, you don't really need to know it. Like, obviously, this is kind of like not the model student's answer. But I'd say there wasn't much. Like, okay, yes, in first year it's quite heavy, but from second year at King's, like, none really. But maybe that's me choosing to like ignore it. But I don't worry too much about it. Like, I personally quite struggled with chemistry at A level, never really understood it, managed to sort of scrape the A. So don't let that stop you or worry about medicine.
Cool.
Because at the end of the day, if you were gonna do that, you would have done a chemistry degree or a biology degree or biochemistry.
So true. I think it's so important to realize that, what separates medicine from any other science is that you will go on to then use that understanding to apply it to real human context. A lot of students who are in their clinical years, similarly to what Tash said, have told me that you forget everything you learn in the first few years, and you realize that what you knew was nothing compared to what you actually need to know going into your clinical years. But based off my first year experience, there has been quite a bit of kind of chemistry, but they always start at the very, very basics. So our course is split into 3 main modules. One of them is called biochemistry and genetics. That's where the chemistry comes into play. And we actually start by learning about protein structure and about the bonds and all sorts of things that you learn in chemistry, but they start at the very, very basics. So even if you didn't really, do that well at chemistry, at A level, didn't really understand it, they start at the very basics, so you can go from there. In terms of maths, honestly, there is not that much. We have medical statistics, which is a module that we do from second term onwards, but again, it starts from the very, very basics. You don't have to have done maths at GCSE at A level, to succeed in that module, and it's just like a pass or fail kind of module. It doesn't count towards your ranking or anything like that. So yeah, if you haven't done maths at A level, then don't worry about your degree. You'll be absolutely fine. I do know that chemistry is required, I think unanimously across most med schools to get into medicine. I don't actually know why. Why do they require? Oh, is that not okay?
Everywhere.
Is it not?
Everywhere.
Okay.
A lot of med schools require it, but there definitely are med schools that you won't have to do chemistry.
Okay.
So
cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Cool. Moving on to the next question, sent in by Best Life G, and they asked, did you pick a 5th option for UCAS?
Yeah. So I did. I picked biomed at UCL. And it was kind of just I had that option, so might as well put it down. I never really considered taking it. I didn't expect, it's not that I expected to get into medicine, but I was kind of quite happy to do a gap year, and then reapply. So I hadn't really considered taking my 5th choice, but it was quite nice because you obviously get that offer really quickly. So, you apply through UCAS in October, and then I think within a few weeks I got that offer. So it was quite comforting and a bit of a confidence booster. So yeah, I did biomed at UCL.
100%. I think the thing is with medicine, so for anyone who's not aware, you can only apply to 4 universities because medicine is so competitive that if you don't get into any med schools, it's so good to have that backup option. the thing is with medicine is that you apply really, really early on. So we're the first people to apply, but the last people to get offers, solely because we have to go through the interview process. And it can get slightly like frustrating, especially if you're applying alongside your friends who aren't doing medicine and they get their offers kind of early on. And it's like, oh, what about me? And so exactly as Tash said, you know, getting that offer from the 5th university can be a confidence boost. In my own situation, I applied to chemistry at Warwick University. Warwick University is like a local university for me, and I wanted to do chemistry before medicine, sorry. So I was like, let me just apply. And another thing that a lot of people tend to ask on this topic is, do you need to write a second personal statement for your 5th university? And the answer is no. A lot of courses similar to medicine, such as, you know, biomedicine, biochemistry, chemistry, in a sense, they will be familiar, they will know that they're going to get a lot of applications from medical students as their 5th place, so they'll be used to it, and they'll know that you're very hardworking students, and you know, if you're able to get through the very like tedious process of application to medicine, you're very much likely to get into those other courses. So no, you can only you don't have to write 2 applications. You could just submit the 1 personal statement, and yeah, hopefully that will work for all universities you apply to. Next question sent in by Asa Vela. I'm sorry if I'm butchering these names. And they asked, do you find time for any extracurricular activities? So I'm assuming this is during our time at university.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you get Wednesday afternoons off university, like completely, like all years you get Wednesday afternoons off, like even in final year of medicine. So yeah, you've got that. You've got uni never goes on past like 5 o'clock, well, like 6 o'clock. So you've got all the evenings, and like you have to make time for co-curricular things, because you would just burn out if you were just studying, and you'd become like a shell of a human. Like you need to do all the things that make you happy alongside of like studying, you know, even if that's to like boost your portfolio, like for your career. Like nobody wants a doctor that just studies. They want them to be like a human and to have things outside of medicine. So yeah, you definitely have time to do co-curricular things.
For sure.
It's just about balance.
And as Tash said, Wednesday afternoon off is the same for, I think, all universities. It happens at Oxford as well. And the reason being is because not only to kind of give students a break, but also because it's like the dedicated sports day. So for me at university, my whole first year, I spent it doing medicine, other things, and also playing netball at a university level. So I was kind of training 4 or 5 times a week, and I had matches on the Wednesday afternoons. So knowing that Wednesday afternoon was completely free was quite nice, because when I had a match, it meant that it wouldn't clash against any lectures, any tutorials. And when I didn't have a match, it was like sweet, like a day off for me to relax or catch up with some of my work. And yeah, you definitely do find time for balance. First year for a lot of students tends to be the year that they just try and have a really good time, because although you are paying, you know, nine grand to, you know, get the education, to get the lectures, you're also paying 9 grand for the social university experience, to go out there, do your extracurricular activities, make friends. And a really good way that I've done that through is societies, as I mentioned earlier. So I joined loads of Freshers Fair is absolutely crazy, because, you know, you're a very naive fresher who thinks you can do absolutely everything. You go through the fair, you end up signing up to like 50 plus societies. I don't know if that was the case for you, Tash.
Yeah, literally.
And you find that you don't have time to go to all of them, but you do go to a few. But yeah, from Freshers Fair, I signed up to so many cool societies, met so many cool people through them, and yeah, you find time to do it. Yeah, hopefully that's answered your question. We'll move on to the next one. And this is sent in by Lalu, and she asks, from which year can I work on my UCAS application?
Ooh. So most people will probably only start like the summer before your A levels, like your final year of college or school. I think most people sort of start of summer will start thinking about the UCAT, will start thinking about personal statement maybe, although I didn't really think about my personal statement until sort of August, September. I mean, it's something that I've thought about, like, why did I never sort of start earlier to give me an extra boost? But I think because you're so busy with sort of the other academic stuff, I don't think it's ever too early to start, but also it's, you have to sort of weigh up what's your priority at the right time. And you just don't need to stress yourself out too far in advance. Like, just enjoy your life as well.
For sure, for sure. I think, yeah, as Tash said, there's so many things that you can be doing now that will definitely help you for your UCAS application. But your UCAS application should not be on the front of your mind if you're, say, in year 11. Something for you to worry about in the next year. I think it's important that we're aware that one day we will be applying to university if that's something you're interested in. And particularly for medicine, work experience is such an important factor. So maybe being aware that you might need to start applying for work experience placements, year 11 to year 12 summer or in year 12. But definitely don't start thinking about your personal statement now. Breathe, relax, especially during these times, which are quite stressful. So important that you relax, focus on what's next. So if you're going into year 12, focus on your A-levels, integrating into sixth form life. But again, it's the same. If you feel like you want to get started with your UCAS application, go for it. If you want to start looking into work experience placements, go for it. There are so many resources out there. Again, as I said, Tash's channel is amazing for prospective students, and she gives advice on how to get into medicine. So definitely check that out, and some of the videos on my channel as well. So hopefully that's answered your question. We'll try and get through the next question. Next one sent in by Nagani. And they ask how much okay, so same question to what we had before. How much chemistry content is in your course? So as we've already answered this question before, I can quickly kind of give an overview. So at Oxford, there is quite a bit in your first year in the biochemistry modules. But yeah, they start from basics. So if you've kind of forgotten all your chemistry or you struggled with it at A level, you won't be kind of disadvantaged in any sense because they do start from basics. And at KCL, Tash?
Yeah, there is chemistry in first year, but it's not the be all and end all. And after first year, that's kind of it. Then you're on to the diseases and that kind of stuff.
All the cool stuff.
The actual stuff.
The actual. Next question sent in by Diddy, and they ask, between the BMAT and the UCAT, which one is highly considered when accepting students to med school at King's and Oxford? So different universities actually use different admissions tests. So no university will use both admissions tests. At Oxford, they expect the BMAT from applicants, and at KCL they expect the UCAT, I believe. Yeah. Cool. Next question. I guess we can kind of talk about how much weighting they put on the admissions test. I think that's what kind of a question was getting at. So at KCR, how much weighting do they put on the UCAT?
So, I mean, I speak from personal experience. My UCAT score was really not very competitive at all, and I still got a place, obviously. So, I mean, from what I know, they sort of look at everything. So, personal statement, work experience, grades, past grades, but definitely look at the website because I know that it's always changing, and I applied 4 years ago. But the websites are normally really, really good. If you go on like entry requirements on each medical school website, it should break it down into how they choose who to interview, and if it doesn't, just ping them an email, or call them. You're not going to get like a black mark next to your name because big red cross over your name because you asked a question. And some universities, some medical schools will have a cut-off score for the UCAT. So you don't want to find that after you apply through UCAS that you didn't even meet the cut-off score, because that's a complete wasted application. So, that resource on the website is so available to you, and it's a really good resource to use. So that's my biggest tip, is to grill their websites.
For sure. And on that topic, there are also freedom for information requests. So kind of, I don't know what the legal background is, but the university is kind of obliged to give information about kind of admissions, kind of information and statistics. So you can probably find them online if you really want to know. At Oxford, we use the BMAT, and when shortlisting candidates for interview, they put emphasis on the BMAT and your GCSE grades. It's like a 50-50 split. However, they do take into consideration your context. So yeah, hopefully that's answered your question. Tash, will you be okay to stay for the next 10 minutes? I probably should have asked you earlier because this is cool. We're going to try and get through. We're going to try and speed through the next questions because there are just so many, and I really want to answer everyone's questions in the next 10 minutes. So let's go. Next one sent in by Lalu, and they ask, how does work experience gain UCAS points? So from my understanding, it kind of doesn't. The UCAS points, I'm not exactly sure, correct me if I'm wrong, Tash, but it's a system which kind of links the points to your GCSE scores and your A-level scores or something like that. But work experience doesn't gain you any UCAS points. It's used by universities in the admissions process, and a lot of med schools will kind of require work experience. But one thing I should say is this year, due to kind of the whole pandemic, a lot of universities are saying that they don't expect applicants to have work experience because, you know, it wasn't feasible or realistic for you to get. So don't press yourself too much if you don't have it this year and you're applying to medicine.
Yeah, I think so. UCAS points, like if you're like medical schools won't really use it because they'll expect candidates to have like through the roof UCAS scores. Like UCAS scores are more for sort of, I don't know how to put this, but yeah, it's just not really necessary for medicine. Like I wouldn't worry about it too much, but no, work experience wouldn't give you extra points. Like UCAS points are things like your obviously your academic grades, like music exams that you've done, like you get points for those kind of things, but you don't need it for medicine. You already have like so many points from your amazing GCSE results, basically.
Cool. And next question sent in by H, and they ask, do you think we should take both the BMAT and the UCAT score even if we think we're only going to apply to the UCAT universities and vice versa? Because could it result in a better test score by focusing on just the one exam? So both me and Tash did the BMAT and UCAT. So Tash, if you kind of want to go first.
Yeah, it's a good question, to be honest, because, you know, by doing the UCAT and the BMAT, you've kind of split your eggs into two baskets. You know, the UCAT, if you have a really off day and you don't do so well, and, you know, you maybe don't think that that's good enough to get into med school. Obviously, UCAT's not the be all and end all. But yeah, then if you're doing the BMAT, then, you know, it's a good way you have a second chance kind of to do like well in that exam. But at the same time, I did the BMAT, but I just found that because it was in October or November, I was so busy with A-level stuff that I didn't really have proper time to revise for it. And because I'd applied to sort of 3 UCAT unis, I was like pretty sort of, I don't know, I just didn't prioritize the BMAT, and it's really difficult. So, I mean, they're both difficult. So I'd say if you are doing both, make sure that you do allow time for both. Otherwise, it's kind of a wasted exam session and like a wasted application. But there are pros and cons of doing one. There are pros and cons of doing both. And I think you have to take it individual by individual. Like maybe have a go at the BMAT past paper and see how you do, see if it suits you better than the UCAT, because they are quite different tests. So that's something to consider. And at the end of the day, it just depends where you want to study. Like if you don't want to go to any of the BMAT universities, like there aren't as many universities that use the BMAT, then don't do it. But yeah, that's my advice.
Amazing. I guess the one thing I can add is that because you do the UCAT before your application deadline, October the 15th, and the good thing about the UCAT is that you get the results straight away, you'll kind of be able to suss out whether you may need to do the BMAT or, you know, may need to kind of retake the UCAT the following year, because realistically, some universities will actually have cut-offs for the UCAT. So if you don't reach a certain threshold, you know, it might be unrealistic that you'll get an interview at the university. So if you know that your score is, you know, not competitive, or unfortunately you have a bad day and your UCAT score is not high enough to get into any med school, maybe you might take into consideration of doing the BMAT, or, you know, alternatively, you may take the year out the following year to reapply. I think the really nice thing about UCAT is that it is before then, so you get to see your scores beforehand and you can apply strategically based off the scores you have. The BMAT, on the other hand, you do after you submit your application, which is a bit more riskier. But for me, I applied to 2 BMAT universities and 2 UCAT universities, so it kind of gave me that balance. But I hope that's answered your question. Next one sent in by Elisa, and she asks, is there any point doing the EPQ even if it won't lower your medicine offer?
So it depends. Like if you want to do it, like it's a good chance to sort of research into something. Like my school actually didn't offer it, so I didn't do one. But at the same time, if you think it will sort of eat into your time that you're revising for your A levels, and you know the university says that it actually won't change anything, then it's kind of like you should have probably just given that time to study for what you actually need. So again, I don't think there's one right answer. I think if you want to, then go for it. But if you don't want to and it's not going to advantage you, then there's no point, basically.
Exactly as Tash said. Hopefully that's answered your question. Next one, also sent in by Lisa, and she asks, are you allowed to move to a London university for clinical years? So I guess you're asking this for Oxford, like my university. And actually, because you know when you apply, you're actually applying to the preclinical school. Once you've graduated from preclinical school after 3 years, you actually have the chance to almost reapply to the university. And it's nothing scary like, you know, applying to the undergrad course. Like you don't have to do another personal statement. If you're on track for a good kind of pass mark, you're probably guaranteed getting into the clinical school, but it does give you the flexibility to apply around. So once I finish preclinical school, I can actually apply to London universities for my clinical years. I can actually apply to Cambridge for my clinical years, and I can also apply to other colleges within Oxford for my clinical years. I can move around, which is a nice prospect. I don't know what I'm going to do personally, but it's nice to know that I've got that flexibility there. Next question sent in by H, and they ask, do you think your university experience being medical students greatly differs from other people who study other courses? And do you find that your friendship circle consists only of medical students? So I think this is another myth as well. I don't know how true it is in KCL, Tash, but it's definitely not true in Oxford that like all the medics tend to hang around. And I guess one of the main reasons for that is because of the collegiate system. The fact that I'm in a college with, you know, 100 other people in my year group who are doing other courses, you know, really diverse courses from classics to, you know, archaeology to medicine to law, means that I naturally make friends with people from other kind of subjects, which is really, really nice. And sometimes you don't want to just be constantly talking about medicine. I find that when I'm with my medicine friends, whatever the conversation is, it could be about the weather, it always ends up leading into a conversation based on medicine. And you know, when you're doing a 9 to 5 per day learning medicine, you know, you may want that little bit of a break, especially when you're with your friends. So it is quite nice, you know, having friends from other courses, and it's definitely feasible, you know. And Tash, what would be your answer to that question?
Yeah, I kind of say the opposite. Like King's is very like all the medics stay together. I think
Really?
Because our campus is like medicine, nursing, it's all the like healthcare degrees.
Ooh.
And we have separate like sports teams. And I think, you know, the nature of it, like you're there for a lot longer than other degrees. And our degree is so different to other degrees, for example, because of the clinical placement. You have things like OSCEs, the like clinical examinations that other people don't have as part of their degree. But again, I don't think it's, you know, like I do have friends who aren't medics, and I completely agree with what Fran says. You definitely need a break from all medics.
That's so cool to like see that distinction between like the different types of universities, and like the fact that having a campus like a medicine or healthcare campus can change your experience in that sense. But you seem to love it, and I seem to love my experience. So it just goes to show that kind of whatever you end up in, like you'll end up, you know, finding your circle of friends, whether that be all medics or people from other courses. Next question, sent in by H as well, and I think this is a really important one. How much do medicine courses at different universities differ?
Quite a bit, I think, in terms of like when you start your clinical placement, in terms of how things are taught. I mean, at the end of the day, you're all learning to meet the specific learning objectives set by the GMC, the General Medical Council, that says doctors qualifying in 20 whatever need to learn this, that and that. But it just differs in how, you know, the universities teach that content. I mean, at the end of the day, I always say medicine is medicine. just concentrate on getting in where you'd be happy at, yeah, of course, but also where you're going to get in, because whether you graduate from Oxford, whether you graduate from like King's, I think medicine is very different in the sense that it doesn't matter that much which uni you've been to. Like for other, I mean, this is my personal opinion, I think for other degrees it kind of matters more, but at the end of the day we're all going to be doctors and thrown into F1 and F2 together at the end of it.
For sure. Other things that like different medical schools differ on are also like the learning style or the teaching style. So I know other universities such as Manchester put great emphasis on PBL, problem-based learning, which is more kind of group work, whereas other universities are more traditional and put more emphasis on, lectures and teaching that way, which can kind of change your experience. But exactly as Tash said, medicine is really, really special in the sense that wherever you get your degree from, you're going to end up, doing the exact same post as an FY1 doctor, which is really, really nice to know. Next question sent in by Asa Vila, yeah. And they ask, when writing your UCAT, how much did you manage to stick to the strict timings? This is such a good question because out of all the exams I've done, the UCAT is definitely one of the most time-pressured exams ever. For me, I found the verbal reasoning section incredibly time-pressured because you're having to get through, I think, 44 questions in, I can't remember the timings exactly. But during my practice, I did struggle to stick to the timings. However, as I progressed and got used to the UCAT format, I did get a lot better with managing my time. One thing I can say is that put more of your time and your revision into doing timed questions rather than doing untimed questions. At the beginning, it's okay to do untimed questions when you're getting familiar to kind of the format and the types of questions that are being asked, but at the end of the day you are having to sit this exam and you're having to do all these questions in 2 hours, so it's in your best interest to get used to doing it under that time pressure. Tash, if you have anything to add.
I don't think you're supposed to be able to finish all the questions. I think they give you too many questions on purpose to kind of stress you out. But that's one of the things that apparently UCAT is testing, your ability to like cope under pressure and time management. But yeah, nothing more to add. I didn't do very well on the UCAT, so don't ask me for UCAT tips.
And another thing I can say is that you don't actually have to answer every single one of the questions to do okay or do well in it. Like when I was watching some of the videos during my preparation for students who did really well in like specific sections, they spoke about how they used a technique of, if they saw a question that they couldn't answer, they would just guess and like move on, because at the end of the day, even if you don't get 100%, you could still get 900, which is the top mark, or you can still get a really, really good score. So it's so important that you take that into consideration. And exactly as Tash said, you're not meant to answer every single question. If you can, that's so amazing. I couldn't personally, but yeah, hopefully that's kind of answered your question. Next one sent in by Victoria, and this might have to be one of the last ones because we've met the 1 hour mark. Victoria asks, how is your social life? Did it change from first year to second year to third year? And she says, thank you for this Q&A, it's so helpful. Thank you for watching this Q&A. I'm glad it's so helpful. Tash is just giggling.
My social life is alright, I think. I'm a bit of an old woman these days in the sense that I just like sitting in front of Netflix with my glass of wine. But yeah, it's so possible to have a social life at med school, and people say that medics are more social. I'm not too sure about that. But yeah, there's so much stuff going on, but don't be afraid to also say no to things. Like, you don't have to go to every social event. It's all right to have nights off, especially during like freshers and first year. You kind of feel like you have to go to everything and it's exhausting, so make sure that you have a chilled days and chilled nights as well in front of Netflix.
Amazing. Honestly, I'm such like a Netflixaholic. I stan. And I guess, I'm just scrolling through all the questions and there's just so many. I'm so sorry that we won't be able to answer every single one, but one thing I can say is that I'll put our social media in the description bar below. So if you have any questions that like are desperate, definitely reach out to them and we'll try and answer them. The final question, because I've seen this one on my live streams quite a lot and I want to address this one, and this was sent in by Salika PM, and they ask, is Harvard or Oxford the best uni to study medicine? What's your opinion? And personally, I don't really know. I'm gonna say Oxford because I'm biased naturally, and some of the league tables do say Oxford, but then some of the league tables do say Harvard. And I mean, I honestly don't know. I was never interested in applying to international universities or medical schools in the US. But one thing I can say is that in the US, you don't directly go into medicine. You can't do an undergrad in medicine. You have to do a course and then do a graduate medicine course, and you have to do like, is it the MCAT, some crazy crazy admissions tests, whereas in the UK you can directly go into undergrad medicine, which I preferred a lot more because it means I spend less time in education, even though it's amazing, 10 years in education's not for me, but yeah, I don't know the answer to this question. I'm naturally going to say Oxford because I go there, and yeah, we've reached the end of this live stream. First of all, thank you so much to Tash for spending 1 hour, 5 minutes answering questions. You've been so helpful, and I hope, her answers have been useful to you guys. And also, thank you so much to everyone who's consistently tuning into these live streams. I hope you're enjoying them, and I hope you're getting something out of them. So sorry we couldn't get through all of them, but we'll try our best, if you send us messages, to answer them. And yeah, I don't know if you have anything to add, Tash, or...
No, feel free to DM me on my Instagram. I literally respond to every message. It might take me a couple of days, but I respond to
it takes you like 2 seconds. Tash, your reply time is crazy. I send her like a message at like 2 a.m. and she replies back within 2 seconds, and I'm like, what the heck does she have?
If you send me a really long question, it might take me a couple of days. So that's a sneaky way to get me to reply quickly. Send me a short question.
Amazing. And yeah, I guess we're gonna love you and leave you guys. Thank you once more, and wishing you, the best rest to your weekend. See you in the next live stream, guys. Bye.
Bye.